6:10. If you plan on staying, that's cool. Otherwise, 6:10. And, oh my God, where's the guy sitting? '20th. Call to order, roll call. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, public comment period correspondence. At this time, I will recognize members of the audience who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the audience. Are there any citizens' comments? Are there any public comments? Are there any public citizens' comments? We'll make it a little more fun tonight. Seeing none, we'll move on to item D, opening comments on 2025-2029 CIP presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Those of you who have been around for a little while know that I give kind of a similar talk to begin the CIP process every year, but I think it's worth repeating just to kind of set the stage for what we're doing here tonight and again next Thursday night, the 27th of June. Before I do, though, I want to thank the people who are involved in putting the CIP together. There's a lot of work that goes into it. I want to first thank Tom, our Public Works Director, who did an outstanding job of leading this process and will be leading us through tonight through the various projects. I want to also thank Jennifer and Jordan from Finance and their hard work on this. Natalie Delo, our Administrative Permit Specialist, who did a lot of the work at Tom's direction in terms of calculating all the updates that staff tried to work through. the process. And then our many great department and division heads, many of whom are in the room right now, some who are not, but for their cooperation and working together to make this document, come to pass. The purpose of the CIP, just to remind everybody, is a blueprint, okay? So we have two main financial documents we talk about a lot every year. The budget is a fixed document. We approve it in the fall, and it calls out very specific revenues and expenditures. If we are going to exceed the expenditures, we are often in front of you looking for a budget resolution to modify the budget. That's because that document is what I would call a fixed document. The CIP, Capital Improvement Program, is more of a fluid document. It's a blueprint. You probably see from year to year, those of you who've been on council for a few years, that you might see a project on the list for 2026 right now. And then next year you look at it and it could be, moved back to 2028. We've had projects moved up as well as back, depending upon priority, depending upon finances. So it's a little bit more an ebb and flow, but it's an important document that governs the larger purchases and the larger expenditures that we make here at the city level. This used to be called but the document, I shouldn't say it used to be called, but it used to have more new projects in it years ago when I first came on board. So there'd be this matrix, if you've ever seen it, that talked about, the new projects and then the maintenance projects. Well, for many years now, with the finances the way they are here, we've basically been in maintenance mode, to be honest. I'm not saying we haven't done anything new. We've had to do some improvements over time, but for the most part, our goal is to keep up our facilities, our buildings, our infrastructure, our parks, to be the quality that people want. And that's a hard task by itself with the available financial resources. There are multiple funding sources in the CIP. The main one we talk most about is, of course, long-term borrowing. That'll get a lot of the focus again here tonight and next Thursday night. But there's also room tax monies, grants, donations, user fees. We have the wastewater and EMS for, enterprise funds. So there's a lot of monies that come from different places into the overall pot, even if long-term debt gets the biggest attention. Speaking of long-term debt, we are targeting, based upon our financial advisor, Ellers, basically $4.5 million a year in borrowing for our streets, our facilities, our major improvements. You will see that we're meeting that this year, with the exception of the fact that the police department relocation is in there in two phases, 2 years, 2025 and 2026. That would be for relocation of the police station to the Buffalo building on the south end of town. And I'm sure Tom will talk about this more, and Jody's here to address it as well, that if in fact we decide not to go forward with that project, there are other maintenance projects that need to happen to keep up the existing building. So you'll be hearing more about that if the council is not favorable toward moving forward with the relocation. This is a two-work session type of environment again, so we'll be meeting tonight and tomorrow night. We'll get as far as we can tonight by 8 o'clock to hopefully hear all the presentations. That'd be wonderful. If not, we'll continue on the 27th. And then, again, Q&A with the council. We want this to be a very interactive participation with these meetings. Ultimately, we hope on the 27th of June to have an agreement by the council to bring a product, modified version of this perhaps, whatever you will, to the council in July, hopefully for adoption. We call it kind of a soft landing. In other words, our intent is that when you adopt the CIP, those projects are going to end up being in the 2025 budget. Now, we know finances might dictate that we have to relook at some of that, but we take this very seriously, and we have for the last few years, that the intent is that what you approve next month, you're going to see in the budget, and we hope you can take it to the finish line, because they've been deemed to be the important and the projects that can be financed. With that in mind, I will turn it over to Tom Turchi, and he'll lead us through the list of departments and divisions that you have on your agenda.
All right, I had a page or two of notes to start with, and Steve hit a good portion of those. Again, I'd like to thank division department heads, staff, and Natalie for getting this process put together and assembled, and balancing this project and all of our borrowing over the next 5 years. Again, like Steve said, this is a working document, and there will be some changes and adjustments that may show up as we go through this. Again, he talked about the big picture borrowing. so I'm skipping half my pages here. So here's kind of the format we'll go through on these projects is we'll go through as it's kind of noted on the agenda, although we'll be starting with the UW projects first. What I figured it would do is do like Dan Kneck used to do when he was here and present the projects page by page. And then if there's questions on those projects by the division or department heads, then we can have those division and department heads step up and answer those questions for you. Russ?
If I could, Mayor, quick question, and again, I'm living in the past, but there used to be citizens that sat on the capital improvement committee. Is that still part of the process?
No,
Or is it all done
can you
in-house?
take that? Yeah, we by I think 19, what am I talking about? 2018 or 2019, adopted a change in policy. I think Dan Kneck actually led that charge to get rid of the CIP committee and make this more of a staff-driven project.
Okay.
So staff has been working on this for probably 3 months off and on over time to get it to this point. And then back then, I don't think we did it this format. We think 2 good solid work sessions with the council away from regular meetings gives the opportunity hopefully to bake and discuss all the different questions about these projects.
Yeah, sounds more efficient. I think we lost a lot of time back in those days.
I think it has been.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. So we'll begin the process, and first I'll invite Tony from the UW up to talk about his projects, and then we'll move into our program.
Good evening, everybody. I am going to start with the capital improvement plan projects for 2024, and I'll go through them very quickly, and if you have any questions, please stop me, and I'll then explain. As you know, this is our 60th year, and starting in 1964, we probably did very few replacements of anything, the roofs, the HVACs, or anything else. Over the last few years, we realized that a lot of these things that we did not repair and did not do any replacing of have, because of wear and tear and weather, of course, in Wisconsin, have gotten to the point where we need to replace and we need to repair a little bit more. There are some areas that you'll see on the capital improvement plan, such as the tennis courts, which we pushed out a little bit. And although Justin and I have talked about the need for tennis courts and making sure the tennis courts are repaired, when you have HVAC systems and when you have roofs that need to be replaced, that has to take precedence, of course. So we've done that. The Arboretum, as you'll see, and we've talked about on the 5-year capital plan, you'll see the Arboretum is also something that we want to address this year. We want to address next year, I should say. And the reason for that is because we've done very little work in the Arboretum. We have a lot of volunteers who've come forth, including the Heifers, who've come forth and given money to support the upkeep of the Arboretum, but we have not come to the council and asked for support. We basically tried to take care of the Arboretum ourselves. But there are some things that we need to do with the trails, obviously. There's some small bridges that need to be fixed. In fact, we have a small bridge that is going to be built so that we have a stream which people can cross over if they have a 4x4 or something else. So we have some things that we have to do, starting with this year, of course, the parking lots, which, especially because of the weather, always need to be dealt with each and every year. Then we have the roof over the lead stairwell, which of course $100,000 is what we're looking at this year. That needs to be replaced. And then we go into the air handling unit in the theater, and a lot of you have gone to the theater and have seen the work that we've done over the years, especially the last few years, with the carpeting and everything else and the stage. But now we need the air handling unit to be dealt with. And then the connector building, which connects, of course, all the buildings, including the rail stem building. We have to address that now, also the flooring there. So that will be approximately $30,000. We go on to 2026 and we talk about a big job, the rooftop unit for the Connect and the Fitness Center. So we have an HVAC system that needs to be replaced there altogether. Again, a lot of these air handling units and HVAC systems have not been addressed since they've been put in. We've been repairing them, but now after so many years, 50 years or so, they've got to be replaced. We go to 2027, and again, we push the tennis courts out because we have other things that need to be dealt with, other major capital projects, but hopefully we'll be able to address the tennis courts in 2027. And then we go on to, of course, the new flooring and ceiling in the layered entrance, which is the entrance right next to the theater for the layered theater. And then 2028, at that point, we're hoping that the boilers last. The boilers have been there since 1964. So if we can, and the mayor last because we sat at the last commission meeting, and I want to thank the people who sat in the commission for the last few years, Al, Mike, Rebecca, all the members of the commission, because you sit there and they realize that the elevators and the boilers and some of these things haven't been replaced since they were basically put in. The boiler is one of those. They don't even make parts of the boiler anymore. We are hoping that it lasts until then, and at that point, then we're going to put it in a new boiler, and then, of course, we'll put the new, we'll change the digital controls in the field house. And then lastly, 2029, of course, we are now looking at the final part of the 5-year plan, which is general building repair, rooftops, doors, windows, and then, of course, sidewalk repair, which we feel that if we can push it out that long and only patch up things, we can hopefully do major work then and hopefully not cost us that much. As you know, we are only looking for half of this to come from the city. The other half comes from Wood County. So you can just divide the total cost each year by 50%, and you'll see the portion that we're asking, requesting from the city. Any questions?
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you so much. I'm just wondering, I'm not seeing where the parking lot is. What year was that under?
Oh, so we have, so we'll take a look at the driveway, the sidewalk and the driveway repair. That's really the parking lot.
Oh, okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments for Tony? Seeing none, thank you, Tony, for the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, moving on to the next is administration. And in administration, they were purchasing the taxi vehicles. That's project 2020-8502. And in 2025, you're looking at 2 vans, 2026, 1 van, 2027, 2 vans, 2028, 1 van. It says 2029, 3 vans, but I think that is actually 2 vans. And you'll see that the price goes from $136,440 the first year, $78 the second year, $160,800 for the 27, and $82,000 for 28. And then finally, $185,760 for 29. And that's using assumed increase in the price of vehicles as we move forward. And this is based also that these vehicles are purchased with grant funding. So there's typically 80% funding towards purchase of these vehicles.
Any questions, comments? Alderman Tompkins?
Is the 80% funding calculated in here, or is this the total price?
What you see on the sheet, if you go to the page 18, you'll see the expenditures is the total price, and below you can see the grants and long-term debt. So if you take a look at the long-term debt, the amount that we're actually paying is the $15,160 the first year, $15,000 the second, $32,160 the third, and continues on. So it should be described as you see it there.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. Just like to request, can we get some page numbers right when you take off? Because it's taken me a while to catch up where you are.
No problem.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
And just a note on that, from now on, going back to the top of the list, it should be numerical in the file, right? Basically,
Yeah.
because we ordered it alphabetically, so going forward, it should be numerical in your book.
Alderman Tompkins?
Just a comment that if you have the paper copy, it looks like it's 1 number ahead. Just so.
Go ahead, Tom.
All right,
Thank you.
so we'll move on to the airport projects. That starts on page 20. And the first one we have is the snow removal equipment building. And we have the design scheduled for 2027 and construction in 2029. And generally, when these types of buildings and projects at the airport, it is a 20% cost to the city and a 80% cost to BOA and the state. So on this one, didn't get listed as grants and that. This is a previous project that was just moved forward. So what we're trying to do in the future is we want to show all the various funding pieces. In the past, some of these projects, we've actually just shown the city portion. So we're going to start showing, we'll talk about some of these costs, but it'll show both the city and the what we're actually looking for. The second project is the reconstruction of the pavement on the runway 1634. Right now we are proposing $10,000 for design services in 2026 and $163,500 for construction in 2028. Now, these projects were originally a little closer in the start of the program, but we're still waiting for the master plan to be approved by BOA and the Federal Aviation Administration. So these are still up in the air on where they actually fit. So we're trying to do the best guesses of what's going to be where they fit in the CIP, and we'll probably see adjustments even from years from here. Again, our share is for the runway extension or the runway pavement project is 5% of the overall cost. The next project is, which on page 22, just to remind where we're going, is the runway 1634 extension and the partial parallel taxiway. Again, this is a 5% city-funded project with design in 26 and construction taking place in 28. Design is estimated at $5,000 and construction is estimated at $113,000. The next project in airport is the old terminal building demolition. This is the building at 201 West 29th, and we have it in 2028 for demolition. This building was actually scheduled to be demoed possibly next year, but because the master plan hasn't been approved, we don't have the authority to go ahead and do that unless we want to pay for 100% of the costs. So. And the final project for the airport is the precision approach path indicator lights. Again, this is a 5% cost with about $6,000 being spent in 2028. And that's the airport projects.
Alderman Wagner? Microphone. Excuse me, Alderman Wagner, your microphone, please. Thank you.
Thought they didn't need it for the way I'm talking, but anyway.
We need it, yeah.
The runway extension and repairs, we've been playing with that now for years.
Yes.
And so far we've been held up by bureaucratic problems, and that is the BOA, or the Bureau of Aeronautics, had to put the application in until it grew a beard and hold on to it that long. And now it went to FAA with an unlimited time for review. So our biggest concern is that, they did some emergency repairs out there, and those emergency repairs may or may not hold up. After they were initially laid last fall, and by this spring, they had already, the cracks have already started showing additional things. So if we can find some cooperation from what would be our federal legislative people, they seem to hold all the cards right now. If we can convince them that they're going to pay more than twice the cost if they let this thing go any longer, I think we're going to have to do it. And we've discussed that at the airport meetings, and it's no matter what we do, we've got to find a way of motivating them. The last thing, that building, the old terminal building, that place is really, really in bad shape. It's pretty much rotting out. And we didn't, we had it as a local cost, as something we would do, but we wanted to wait until we had the runway project underway because we could make it part of the runway project itself. And I can't tell you how long it's going to take. I just wish that if you've got any good friends, doesn't matter which party, doesn't matter what they're carrying, tell them that Marshfield needs their runway fixed, period. So that's about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments about the airport? And I mimic everything that Alderman Wagner says, because I attend all the airport meetings. I would invite any of the alder people to attend, just to learn a little bit more about the airport. I have been very much excited to learn and, again, reach out to the people in higher places. If more of us reach out, more will happen, because we want more business at the airport. So that's my little 2 cents, actually 3 cents. Alderman Stauber?
If Mr. Wagner would provide us with maybe some key contacts and some talking points, I'm sure we'd be glad to. Yeah. Yeah. Will do.
Moving on.
All right. The next on our agenda is the cemetery. So the first project I have is a cemetery maintenance building roof, and that is scheduled at $15,000 in 2025. And that's starting on page 26 in your book. So cemetery road maintenance is something that they're starting to do more of. And for 2025, we have $25,000. And I know Tim and Justin were working on that, and we coordinate efforts to make sure we can get as much bang for our buck when we do these projects. For 2027, we were looking at spending another $25,000 on cemetery road maintenance. And 2029, we're looking at another $25,000 for road maintenance. And that basically finishes up our capital projects for the cemetery.
Alderman Fire?
I see the replacement for the building is not within the next 5-year plan. We had that in a CIP for quite a while, and it's been excluded. And I know right now that they haven't got enough room to put all their equipment in. There's equipment sitting all over the cemetery that isn't being covered in the building. So is it scheduled? When is it going to be scheduled? That's the question.
Well, that was part of our balancing act when we were going through these projects. And we discussed that and we moved it to 2030 or beyond because it just doesn't fit within the current budget plan.
Any other questions, comments on cemetery? Seeing none? Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, I know that there is a, I'm forgetting the word of the perpetual use fund for the cemetery. Does that fit with roads for the cemetery, or is that different?
I will let Justin answer that one.
It's called a perpetual care fund, and that kind of goes to columbariums and things of that nature. So we invest money into building these large structures, and then recoup money through the sales. So it kind of repeats, and it's kind of a savings account. Yes.
Gotcha.
So it's a
Thank you.
perpetual care fund.
Alderman Stauber?
As a follow-up to Mike's question about projects that come off the list and go out into infinity. Do we capture those in kind of like a parking lot so that we see that? And is it listed in the CIP?
It is currently not listed in the CIP, but the project's still on our Planet software. It's just placed in a year that's just beyond the limits of this, so it will pop up automatically again when we move forward, but I do not have them listed as part of this, but we could do that for you.
It might be handy. That way we don't lose sight of it, because I would not have asked that question had Mike not brought it up.
So I can do that. I think that might be the only project that actually got moved out beyond the window at this point.
Thank you.
Alderman Wagner?
Yeah, Justin, When was the last time, we were gonna be building a new columbarium out there, weren't we?
This year it was approved.
This year was approved and it's gonna be under construction this year?
Yep.
And you make a profit off of that, that goes into the perpetual care fund?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Fire?
The only comment that I go back to the building is, the only comment that I go about the building is because if anybody ever worked in a cemetery in the middle of winter and you got a piece of equipment that sits in the backyard, it takes a long time to warm it up and it's hard on the equipment. So you got to look at the cost of the equipment versus that building. And you're probably wasting money because it's hard on equipment to sit out and not be able to keep it in warm where it should be when you want to work with it.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you. Next, communications.
And that part starts on page 35. So the first project we have listed is video broadcaster for meetings. And through some discussions that we had today, this project is actually going to be moved to be replaced in 2032 because of some software discussions today. So this one will be actually removed from the CIP. The next one is the city website, and that is looking to be redone again at some point here, and roughly $10,812 per year for here on out. And then the public input software, I will have Tom come out quickly and just describe that a little bit. But this project was basically moved to come out of the 235 fund, but there was a meeting that was held, and I let Tom kind of explain that a little bit further detail.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Recently, we had a meeting with the Communications Committee to review the platform. It is a 2-year contract at a cost of $12,500 right now, $12,500. It will go up to about $13,000. I wanted to put it in front of you guys to see if that's something we want to continue. As a staff, we've talked about it and felt that we would discontinue this. It is a big amount coming out of the 235, but we wanted you guys to be aware of that. We used it for the chicken ordinance, and we used it for a comprehensive plan, I believe, for Parks and Rec, and a few other little things in there. It does offer more things. We haven't been able to do that because of time, and but it can do more than we have. I'm willing to get a presentation if you're interested, but I just wanted to bring light if you want to continue that, or if we should not continue that. We have it through June of 2025 paid up.
Cool.
Should we finish the presentation, or would you folks like to
Well,
speak now?
Yeah, I guess
Since
I'm not
Tom is
clear.
here?
I'm
Okay,
not clear.
then
on
we're good.
what
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because after the last one, Alderman Stauber.
I'm not clear what we're actually talking about. What does the software do?
Yeah, public input is a software program for survey tool, is what we mainly used it for. It does have a meeting tool as well as a project planning tool. So if you want to do a comprehensive plan, you can start with that. A consultant could use that platform and put their project at the beginning and then tie everything together in one spot. But we haven't used it yet for that board.
So getting public input is always good. What's the workaround? Is it like SurveyMonkey or something like that?
Yeah, partially we could use SurveyMonkey. One of the things about a survey, and Tom can mention a little bit about it, in the past there were surveys before my time was done, I believe, by UW. It's hard to, as staff, to really conduct a survey. That's one of the concerns of staff, is to have an outside group maybe do that survey. So there's, I don't want to say bias, but that's the kind of a thing that we've been talking about. Although I just want to let you know that program does more than survey, but what we've used it for is really only survey at this point.
Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
So for the website updating, it looks like it's a 4 to 5 year process, but then does it just start all over again? So is this the same amount are we always going to see this in the CIP?
Probably not. The reason we have it in the CIP this time, and generally this comes out of the 101, it's not It's not a budgeted, or it's not a loan or so. It comes out of our IT budget. But the reason why this is there's an implementation. If we switch platforms, it's going to cost more. And then they take it over a 5-year period, which gets just over that $10,000 mark, right? And that's why we put it in here. Right now, we pay less, about $6,000, but there's some other add-ons that the 235 pays. So we're like really close into that area. We're trying to put it all together and have one platform that does a lot of things, making it more efficient.
Thank you, Tom.
And maybe just to provide a little bit more clarification, when Tom's talking about the 101 and the 235 account, the 101 is the general fund which we're borrowing money or levying taxes for. The 235 account is actually the user fees or the fees that are received from the city by the cable users in the city. So.
Thank you for that. Next, development services.
All right, on page 39, we only have one program here, and it's called the Affordable Housing Program. And it's basically using the TIF dollars that we collected by the closure of the TIF, and it's being proposed to be spend about $400,000 in 2027.
Thank you. Emergency medical services.
All right, since...
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman O'Reilly, did you have a question? Okay, thank you. Quickly.
Could you lead a little bit more into that, where that 400,000 would be used? Is it, I mean...
Well, I think that
just
was,
an
I'll let
idea for the
Steve answer
future?
it, because I think he's a little bit more in tune with that.
That's a good point. We did adopt a resolution earlier this year, I think it was in January, that just really put a bookmark down that we intend to collect 1 year of increment as we close TID 5 that can be used for affordable housing, expecting it to be between $400,000 and $500,000. We, in that resolution, listed a number of possible uses, ways that would benefit lower to moderate income. It could be in terms of rent, it could be in terms of new construction for a facility that might be affordable. It could be in any number of ways that would largely benefit people with lower to moderate income. I don't think the entire amount has to be for that, but the vast majority is supposed to be used to benefit those individuals. So we've got some time now really to work it out and nail down what a program would look like before we have to make that decision. We don't even have those monies, I don't believe, yet. All right. We do now? Okay. So they are set aside for that purpose.
Alderman Tompkins?
Tom, can you just explain the sentence? There's two questions within the sentence. The first year of the program, staff is requesting $100,000 from ARPA funds as seed money from the program. Do we still have ARPA funds available?
I think those have all been identified. This is a leftover from last year, so this program hasn't changed. The narrative hasn't been changed. I'm not sure who created the narrative from Development Services or if it was Steve at some point, but This is it. I circled that too because I saw that right away, and I said, well, that I don't think the ARPA monies are available anymore.
Yeah, that's leftover language from a previous CIP when we wanted to jumpstart it. We don't have that opportunity anymore. Those funds have been accounted for. It's really the 400 to 450 that we, roughly in that range that we have from the 1 year TID increment from TID 5.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you. So I guess I have to direct this to Steve because he's a little more familiar with how the infrastructure works. But if we wanted to do some kind of a housing program, say a rehabilitation program, let's see, the Juneau County has gone out of that business now. So who do we have locally that we could get to run or be the initial recipient of the draft grants and things like that if we wanted to do that kind of thing?
Are you talking about what we talked about in a recent council meeting where we were discussing the fact that people get loans to fix up their homes, or are you talking about something broader than that?
No, I'm talking about the first part. I'm talking about the people being able to fix up the home, or a contractor to fix up a home, resell it, put it on the market for less than $400,000 or something like that. Basically, it's a low-income housing idea that we're playing with.
Okay, I'm not really sure about that. I mean, I know the program that we got recently and we re-upped to move our money from Juneau County to the state was based on the idea that we're providing loans to people to do any number of things, as far as improving their home, maintenance work, and then they don't have to pay off until they sell or move or whatever. There are a lot of programs out there, and I guess I'd have to nail down exactly what program we're talking about, but we can certainly look.
Well, I mean, we've talked about the fact that one of the ways we can provide, one of the best, most efficient ways we can provide cost-effective housing for low and moderate income people is to run a rehabilitation program. But I guess what I'm asking you is, what would we do locally to make that happen?
Well, again, we could look at this, we have opportunities to do many things with that 400,000+ from that 1-year TID increment. And maybe something along the lines of developing the program you're talking about is an idea. In addition to sending people to the state to apply for the home fix-ups, we could maybe run our own program perhaps and make those kind of loans or grants. I'm not familiar with it. I've never been part of doing it before, but that's okay. That's a real possibility. I mean, our options with those monies are pretty open in terms of anything that would support and promote the housing opportunities for what they call LMI, lower to moderate income.
And just one last thing, I just want to make it clear that that money is the last payment, or the payment after the last from the TIF district. And then we can only take it out and use it if it is based with housing, low and moderate income housing. Isn't that correct? Or just housing itself?
Yeah, it's for affordable housing, and the lion's share of those funds need to be spent on projects or programs related to providing affordable housing opportunities for people of lower to moderate income. That is the premise under which the state created that 1-year increment retention. You're right.
And I guess I want to add that is not a pool of free money sitting there waiting for somebody to liberate it. This is money that has to be used for a specific purpose, and that's it.
Yeah, and what we'll need to determine as we go down the road here is what's the best bang for the buck. I mean, $400,000 to $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, but it depends on what you're doing. It could go rather quickly. So what's the best use of those funds we'll need to determine at council level to make the most impact.
Emergency medical services.
All right, with emergency medical services and fire and rescue, I'm going to put those two at the bottom of the list and come back to those, as we don't have any representatives tonight here from the fire department. They were unable to make it. So I want to make sure that we have the ability to answer any questions that come from that. Okay?
Thank you. Engineering?
So then we'll move to engineering. Okay, the first project we have on the list is 5th Street, Chestnut Avenue to Oak Avenue reconstruction. Design is underway right now for this project. It's a 80-20 split with STP Urban Program. The project itself has got a grant from the DOT for $1.227 million. And so I have it listed, the grant information in here and the actual cost for the city. Construction is slated for 2026 for this project. The next, and by the way, we're starting on page 52 so that you know where we're at. All right. The next project is a citywide traffic modeling analysis. We have that scheduled for 2027. The last time we did an entire city analysis of traffic signals and adjusting those was back in 2008. So it's almost getting close to being 20 years old. So I know Jordan is actually looking to see if there's any grant opportunities to help assist with that project. The next project is sidewalk annual order repairs. And so these are locations where we're doing the Safe Step program and issuing orders for sidewalk that is defective. We start out in 2025 with $35,000. As we approach 2028 and 2029, they moved it up another $5,000, as this doesn't get us very far with a lot of our work. So what we try to do is try to keep maintenance of responsibility for sidewalks when we can, and working forward getting those repairs done. The next one is the aerial photo and planimetrics. This project is done every 5 years and is scheduled for 2025 at $235,000. There's shares of costs between wastewater utility, the water utility, and long-term debt. The next one is our asphalt paving program. As you're aware, we do this on a regular basis. Our plan is to do in 2025 $2.1 million of asphalt mill in place and overlays. The next project is asphalt paving program for 2026. This is, we're proposing to do $2.32 million of asphalt work in 2026. The next project is our traffic signal LED bulb replacement. Now, with this, we have about $15,000 a year, and we're hoping that by the time we hit 27, that we have upgraded and fixed most of the LED bulbs in the city of Marshfield. We originally installed a lot of the LEDs, went from incandescent lights to LEDs back in 2003, 2004, and what we're doing is we're upgrading those lights in the traffic signals, plus we're also adding any intersections where we have the walk, don't walk signs, we're adding the countdown timers to those when we do these intersections. They typically gets 3 intersections per year. Then we have the asphalt paving program for 2027 at $2.3 million. And the next project is Vine Avenue 2nd Street to 4th Street reconstruction. Now, this was originally in the capital improvement program for construction in 2025. And what happened is that I applied, engineering and Public Works applied for STP Urban Grant for this project, and we were just notified about a month ago that we were awarded an 80-20 project for this reconstruction. So we moved it back in the capital improvement program to start possible design back in 2026 with construction in 2028. And the grant funding for that is a total of $724,000. Then we have Vine Avenue from 4th Street to 14th Street, total reconstruction. I know Russ is very familiar with this project. And this is scheduled to start design in 25-26 with construction in 2027. This again is also a STP Urban project with $1.775 million in grant funding for this project. Vine Avenue, Depot to Arnold reconstruction. This pavement is in rougher shape, and we have 6-inch vitrified clay. And if you maybe are aware, we've lined sewers in the past when we can, a vitrified clay, but we can't do 6-inch. It just doesn't work. So what we were doing is proposing a replacement, and then we would do work to replace the street pavement. And that project for construction year is scheduled for 2028 at $215,000. Then we have the asphalt paving program for 2028 at $2.3 million. And then the asphalt paving program for 2029 at $2.56 million. And the next project is traffic controller upgrades. A lot of our traffic controllers in the city of Marshfield were in, about 2000 vintage. And in order to make sure that we can keep up with the programming, the software that we have for our some of our current controllers is no longer available, that we're looking at doing some upgrades. And this is kind of to work with in conjunction with our SISP program, which we're trying to do a interconnect project to get a better connection between all the controllers. And we're proposing $30,000 in 2025, $20,000 in 2026, and $20,000 in 2027. And now new to the capital improvement program is East 4th Street, Maple Avenue to Peach Avenue. This street has older sanitary sewer, older water main, and we applied for STP Urban Grant funding to replace this street. And we were notified about a month ago that we were awarded it. So this project, we have about $1.5 million worth of grant funding that will be coming to help assist with the reconstruction of East 4th Street. Next is Veterans Parkway, Draxler Drive traffic impact analysis. With the TIF that we have down where Quick Trip is, we're looking at working with a doing a traffic impact analysis and providing another access to this little business area and getting another tie-in to Highway 13. We've already had conversations with the DOT, and they are holding a project for us to get moving to get this open. And what this would be is more of a right in, right out to get traffic out onto Highway 13 to head north, or right in if they bypass that first intersection and get back into this little area. So that's $80,000 to do that study and apply for all the necessary permits with the DOT. Then and this is all TIF dollars that is planned through this. This TIF is doing well right now. The next project is the Draxler Drive and connection to Veterans Parkway construction project. We have design scheduled for 2028 with construction scheduled for 2029 at about $2.26 million. The next project on our list is their sanitary sewer lining citywide. And you'll see we have approximately $250,000 from 2026 to 2029. We typically try to bid these as combined projects near the end of the year so that we can spend $500,000 at a time because we get better bid prices with that. At this point, I'm very familiar with these because I used to write all the contracts for them. And we've done over 43 miles of sanitary sewer in the city of Marshfield by lining it. And as I figured, it has saved over $12 million in street restoration costs. So we move on to the next project is sanitary sewer on 5th Street, Chestnut to Oak. This is part of that companion project to the street reconstruction, and it's scheduled for 2026. And then we have Cedar Avenue, 8th to 14th, sanitary sewer reconstruction. And this is just reconstructing the sanitary sewer in the center of the street and may take a look at laterals at the same time. This again is a 6-inch main where we can't really replace it or line it, so we have to do replacements. So we're working systematically to get rid of our 6-inch lines in the city of Marshfield. Then I have Walnut Avenue, Depot to Blodgett, and this again is a replacement of sanitary sewer 6-inch, and that is for $155,000 in 2027. And as a companion project to the 4th Street reconstruction, we have from Maple to Peach, we have some sanitary sewer work, and we're projecting around $300,000 worth of work in 2028. And Vine Avenue, 2nd Street to 4th Street, sanitary sewer reconstruction. Now this project I actually have labeled incorrectly on the page 84. Because we moved this project, the street construction project, I forgot to actually advance this one to meet the same construction timeline as the street construction. So we'll fix that before the next meeting. But we're looking at construction starting for this project in 2028 also. We have Cherry Avenue from 3rd Street to 9th Street sanitary sewer reconstruction. Again, this is a replacement of 6-inch sanitary sewer main. And 4th Street, Walnut to Chestnut sanitary sewer reconstruction. And this again is for 6-inch replacement. Is scheduled for 2027. Arnold Street from Central Avenue to Maple Avenue sanitary sewer reconstruction. This is to also replace 6-inch, and that is scheduled at $70,000 in 2028. And Vine Avenue, 4th to 14th, which is a part of the companion project of the street reconstruction, and that is scheduled for construction season 2027 at $580,000. And then finally, Vine Avenue, Depot to Arnold sanitary sewer reconstruction, which goes with the street reconstruction project at $95,000 in 2028. So that kind of wraps up engineering, if there are any questions on the engineering side of things.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. First of all, Tom, this is just so impressive. Like, it's so impressive how many grants you've gotten. It's impressive how you just have a plan. You know exactly what streets need to be done. So thank you for doing your job well. I have a question on page 55, the sidewalks. Is this that we borrow the money and then as the sidewalks get repaired and the citizens are billed, that cost comes back to the city? Is that how that works?
So a portion of that. So if we do what we've done at the Board of Public Works level, if we can fix an offset joint on a sidewalk with the Safe Step program, we have basically, because of the amount of bookwork that you have to take and manage that, to charge somebody $20 or $100 just to fix a joint, we at the Board of Public Works level said, we'll just do that because it's a quick way of fixing things. It's done in a day. When we give orders for someone to replace their sidewalk, they first have the opportunity to replace it at their own expense. If not, the city has to then go in and replace it, and then we do assess them for that work afterwards.
Okay.
Just another quick note with that, curb ramps and the sidewalk at the cornerstone where the curb ramps meet our city responsibility. So a lot of that money is also spent in those locations too.
Gotcha. The sewer mains that we're replacing, how long do those last when you?
I'm going to guess that some of those 6-inch sewer mains are more than 100 years old.
Wow. And when we replace them, how long do you think they'll last for?
75 to 100 years.
Wow. Okay. And then the costs, yeah, we won't be here that long. The costs are lower. So then, like, if you redo a whole road, but you are opening up the road and then having to, so why is it lower?
Well, in some of those where we're just doing the sanitary sewer, we're just doing a trench more or less. So we're working in the center of the road and we're not typically taking the whole road out and then we're making repairs and putting things back.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Alderman Stauber?
Thank you. Sidewalks. I'm thinking back to a day we might have had some interns working for the city and they spray painted sidewalk lines if the rise was higher than a half inch and the gap wider than a half inch. And I think it probably upset a lot of residents. So I'm going to ask a question and maybe plant a seed. Low-income housing. Not that I want to spend the $400,000 right off the bat, but could we maybe consider that to help fix some of the sidewalks in town? Because there are a lot of safety issues with sidewalks, as you know. They just don't seem to be getting the attention. And if we could incentivize residents through maybe access to grant dollars to repair their sidewalks, it might be something to consider.
I think we'd have to take a look and see how broad that use of those monies would allow us to be to benefit low to moderate income. But go beyond the facility, the home themselves, to cover things like the sidewalk in front of their house. But we can certainly check. It's a good idea.
In the past, we've had upwards of $50,000 to $60,000 in sidewalk maintenance programs. The hard part is that with the number of staff we've had, it is getting difficult to keep up with doing all the inspection and that with it. We do have the city divided into areas of 10, and then when you put out all the notices, we were having a problem not being able to keep up with the amount of notices that we sent out and having the money to fix everyone's sidewalk when they didn't do it. So it was kind of defeating itself. So we're trying to get the worst stuff at this point and trying to keep the city moving forward, but it is a struggle with the numbers that we have.
Alderman Giles?
Staying on the theme of sidewalks, what actually goes into determining the need for repair of the sidewalk? Is it something, complaints by residents, or is it the city itself determining that?
Okay, so we actually have a policy which I'll provide for you at our next Board of Public Works meeting that actually states when we do require repairs. And right now, the majority of the, if we receive a complaint, that's when we're doing inspections and trying to work on those first.
Thank you. Next up, facilities management.
Okay, that's on page 94. And what we have is a City Hall variable frequency drive VFD replacement. The city has 2 air handling units, and we're looking at replacing those with the VFD drives, and we're looking at spending $20,000 in 2025. And hopefully that would help keep this room a little bit cooler in the long run.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.
Okay, that was great. Fairgrounds Commission.
Okay, we have capital improvements in the fairgrounds, and what we have here, I'll go through the list and the years that they're being proposed. And only the city of shares shown in these projects. So the electric panel to the north restrooms is scheduled for 2025 at $40,000. The electrical panel at the Schneider 4-H building is 2026 at $40,000. Electrical panel for the round barn at 2027 for $30,000. Lang 4-H furnace in 2025 for $12,000. Grandstands, roofs, and wall in 2028 for $90,000. And a fair office in 2029 at $250,000. And again, the expenditure here is $25,000 a year for just the city.
Alderman Wagner?
Do we still have an active agreement going on with the county to pay 25%? Can we make it to the other agreement with the county?
I can't answer that for you tonight. I'm not aware of what agreements we have with the county when it comes to these fairground site right now.
Well, it's
Maybe Justin can do that.
there's a separate maintenance thing that you have, but as far as capital goes, we used to say that we set aside $25,000 from the city per year and $25,000 from the fair, well, from the county, actually. It's not the fair itself that pays for it, it's the county board. So that gave us $50,000 a year on we needed on a project. We could do essentially 400,000 or so of work over X number of years. Do we still do that? I mean, or have you talked to them about that?
We have 3 members of the Fairgrounds Commission here tonight that can comment about it as well. In 2012, they took a $400,000 loan out, and that $25,000 from each party went towards repayment of that loan.
Right.
That expired in 2022. Last year, there was still a commitment by both parties to commit $25,000 for capital projects. The commission now is still deciding what to do going forward, whether they want to take out another loan or they want to continue to use that $25,000 for smaller projects. I know Russ, Rebecca, and Brian are here who sit on the
I'd like
commission.
to hear from them as to what they have in mind.
Alderman Stauber?
Thank you, Mayor. Correct. Commissioner President Butke brought up the idea of a large loan to clean up some of the items on the to-do list. That discussion is fairly new. We just had it at our last meeting about a month and a half ago. The other, and it did get support. I think the consensus was to look at it, but to drill down and make sure that we understand which projects would fit, in that list and what the cost would be. Not just hey, let's go borrow 400,000. Let's really put some thought into it. The other moving part at the fairgrounds is the proposed expo building. And if that goes through, things like the fair office, are probably going to be included in the design of the new expo building. And that's just one example. So I don't know if I'm staying on track here, but this Fairgrounds Commission needs could change substantially depending upon the outcome of the expo building reception.
Okay.
If I could just note for a second, Dan Kinect of MSA Professional Services will be here this coming Tuesday night to make a presentation on that proposed expo building.
And then Dan Connected made that same presentation to the county on Tuesday. So he presented at the county, and he was planning on presenting here on Tuesday, that same presentation.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Moving on to fire and rescue.
Again, I'll delay this to the end since we have no representatives of fire and rescue here. And we'll move on to the library, which at this point, we do not have any projects for the library. The next on the list is the Parks and Recreation. So the first park project is the Brain Park parking lot scheduled, and I'm sorry, let's go to, it's page 105, so that, since we jumped forward on this.
Thank you.
Just to make sure. And so that is scheduled for construction in 2029 with design starting in 2028. And the construction is expected to be about $325,000. We have the parks maintenance building, and if you remember, the old wastewater treatment plant was converted into the parks maintenance building, and they're looking at doing a replacement of the floor and improved drains and add some storage and shelving for $40,000 in 2028. Trail, Greasy Park to Pecan Parkway. This is a link to our trail system to cross some wetlands and work our way across the greenway to link two projects. And $25,000 is scheduled for 2025 for construction of this. The Greasy Park Playground. The playground is 24 years old and has a typical lifespan of 10 to 15 years. We're looking at spending $150,000 in 2027. We have the Brain Park softball field, and looking at spending $100,000 in 2025. And then the Brain Park Playground scheduled for 2026 at $115,000. We have the Brain Park Pavilion and restrooms. This project design starting in 2028 at $20,000, and then construction being in 2029 at $375,000. This was moved back a little bit in the balancing act that we did to maintain that $4.5 million per year. The Wildwood Station Building and Pavilion. This would be doing some repairs to ceiling panels, staining the building, repairing various items in it, and that's scheduled for 2028 at $50,000. And then park amenities, looking at spending $65,000 in 2025 to purchase picnic tables, trash receptacles, recycling cans, bleachers, and benches for the park systems. The Forest Ridge Park basketball court replacement, looking at 2028 and spending $75,000. And then we have the asphalt program in the Parks Department doing work within the Wildwood, and we look at spending $30,000 in 2026. And actually, this will be for trail systems, so it would be also trail in other locations in the city too. Again, in 2028, spending $35,000 on trails and asphalt surfaces within the park. And in 2029, spending another $35,000. Then we have the Wildwood Park Playground, and we're proposing $160,000 in 2029. And trails and asphalt maintenance scheduled for $80,000 in 2028. And this would be for a trail system within Wildwood Park itself. Then the next project is the Wildwood Zoo Wolf Exhibit, looking at spending $80,000 in 2029, and this is half room tax and half donations. Wildwood Zoo Prairie Dog Exhibit, looking at $50,000 in 2028. This is, again, is 50%, 50%, $25,000 with private donations and $25,000 in room tax. Then we have Wildwood Park, Jurassic Park, and this project is to relocate the well-known attraction from Clyde Winia's property to Wildwood Park, and they're looking at about $750,000 for design and construction services in 2027, with $3 million being spent in 2028 for construction. And they're looking at hopefully donations and private funds for that project. And that kind of lines up the rest for Parks and Recreation. I don't know if there's any questions for Justin on those projects.
Alderman Stauber?
A question on funding sources. I'm not sure if this would be for Jennifer or Justin, but I see room tax, I see long-term debt, and I also see private donations. How do we delineate when those funds are activated, those sources are activated, and how do we actually promote private partnering on these buildings? For example, Greasy Park, we need a new playground. Are we authorized to open that up to another family to say this is the, the O'Reilly playground, for example, within Greasy Park?
That's a good question.
Follow the money, follow the money.
Number one, we usually use private donations first and foremost. So there's natural partner organizations like the Zoological Society or the Friends of the Trails. Another big advocate that has recently came about is the Weber Foundation from Jim Weber in Prevention Genetics. He's a huge trail supporter. He keeps asking. The $25,000 for design services are coming directly from him. He's interested in doing more trail development. I said we needed to get more numbers and more concrete numbers rather than just speculating on what it's going to cost for trails. The next option is room tax, using all room tax dollars. Then next, and then lastly is long-term debt. So that's kind of how the priority is. Private donations sometimes, like the pickleball group, they're out there. Yeah. They just need a little push, and they go gangbusters. Some are a little harder. The Community Foundation and grants. On Tuesday, I hope to get approval to apply for a grant from Wood County to help out with the Brain Park softball field for next year. And then we always apply for grants. They're usually small, $5,000, $10,000. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes not. Same with DNR Forestry. We apply for a lot of grants that way. So number one priority is donations. Second is room tax. Third is probably grants. And then lastly is the long-term debt.
So when we see, for example, room tax on a variety of projects, you're basically spreading those funds across those projects. There isn't any prioritization use of room tax dollars.
No, not really. We use it for whatever makes sense. If it's repairing asphalt roads, it's repairing asphalt roads. If it's for a playground project, we'll use it for that, whatever we can. And even Visit Marshfield will partner and help us out with projects from time to time.
Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. The softball field, I seem to recall that bid was high, and so it wasn't done. Is this 100,000 extra to sort of cover what we anticipate?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. And then if room tax were to increase, would any of these projects, if available, would they ever come up sooner?
Yep. We're hoping to start developing a balance for that room tax and start using that fund balance for more projects moving forward. Our finance department has been great on tracking the room tax and going back historically and seeing where monies were spent and trying to build that fund up going forward.
Thank you.
Alderman Stauber?
Yeah, so a follow-up on that. So that fund that you're building up would be what, a maintenance fund then?
It would be similar to our 235 fund balance or the room tax fund balance to be used for future maintenance. So once again, room tax would be the first one. If we have a balance, we'll use that. Long-term debt is our last option for any project.
It just kind of brings the question of, the pickleball group, they're doing a fine job raising funds, and they're also, including, as you know, maintenance funds. And it's easy to accept woods and call it a park, but then you've got maintenance and such. So I'm just, I guess, asking a question, floating in an idea. Again, is the creation of a maintenance fund for our parks in scope?
Actually, it was recommended by our committee to develop like an endowment fund through maybe the foundation for long-term maintenance for our park projects and park maintenance and see if there's interest in the community. I don't know if all of you know or maybe not know, but the current executive director for the foundation has left and she's going up to Alaska where it's colder. Anyway, that was on our priority list. I talked to her. She was pretty excited, but she's leaving, so we'll have to start that process of hiring a new executive director at the foundation.
Any other questions, comments? Moving on, police and emergency management.
All right, the first project is the PD siren replacement. This is for replacement to the emergency sirens. They usually have about a 15-year service life. The following locations, 5th and Sycamore was installed in 2009 and 21st and Hume in 2010. So they're looking at spending $19,000 in 26 and $19,000 in 27 to replace those. We have PD vehicle equipment and replacement. We're looking at typically three patrol cars on an annual basis. From 2025 to 2029, we have $198,000 for the first year, $265 for the second, $218 for the third, $284 for the fourth, and $227,000 for the fifth year of that program. And then we have the PD building at the Buffalo building. From this project, we put in $500 million for construction in 25 and 26, which puts $10 million for construction of the building, $820,000 for consultant services to do the design and layout for the building. From this plan, it was estimated the new station, this was from the ADCI report that was done in 2024. The new station would be about $15 million to construct. The estimate that ADCI had was about $13 million to rehabilitate the current building and make it work for the police department. And this was pared down to $10 million over 2 years to fit within the borrowing of the city of Marshfield. If this project is not to be done or not move forward, and this is a decision for you guys, we need to move back in the HVAC systems for 2027 at $200,000 and a roof, I'm not sure if that, at $95,000 for 2025.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, stormwater? Oh, I'm sorry.
We have a couple
Just
questions.
got the button, you guys.
Yeah,
Come on, do it a little quicker, all right?
Yeah, you should.
Alderman, you make me look bad, okay? And that's the truth.
Always look
Alderman
at,
Staub, always, thank
always
you
look at
very much,
Stauber. He's
Alderman
gonna have a
Stauber.
question.
Yes, sir.
more than Tompkins.
No, that's
The
fine.
question I have, it came up during Fire and Police Commission meeting, and I didn't quite track it, but the first part of the question I had, I think I've got an answer, and that's, you know, the Wildwood building is currently being used to some degree. So it sparked the question to me is, could we make a transitional move from the current facility to Wildwood Station or Wildwood building? And I'm not sure about that. I now see, you know, we've got 5 million and 5 million, so construction looks phased, but I'm just wondering from a programming stage, you know, can the building be used and can we phase into it? But the other question that was probably more interesting to me, and I don't know who asked it, you were at the microphone, someone asked about the funding sources. And they tied it to community development, and Andy Keogh answered it. But he made it sound like Community Development Authority could be used as a financial vehicle for this type of project. Is that?
I don't know that I could speak to that, but it's been mentioned that that'd be a possibility.
Yeah, I know we've talked about the fact that they have bonding authority. I mean, but, you know, that doesn't necessarily absolve the city of its ultimate responsibility. There's no revenue source coming in. If you think about the CDA was used as bonding authority for the TIF district where Ford Bank built that project in, you know, a few years back, but there was a committed revenue source to cover that. In this case, you know, the city would still be on the hook, is my understanding, should it be needed to make the debt payments.
He used the term lease, you know, it'd be like we pay a rent or something like that. And I didn't quite get where that was going, so.
Please.
I don't know if anyone from CDA has any other insight on that, but it just piqued my curiosity.
So in that type of an arrangement, the CDA would own the building and lease it back to us. And we would incur debt in order to make that loan payment to the CDA who borrowed on their borrowing authority. Because there isn't another funding source other than the city taking debt, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go that route. In the case where we currently do that, there's a TIF district, and the increment from that district comes to the city. We, in turn, pay the lease to the CDA. So that's why that arrangement works in that scenario.
So I'm just kind of wondering then, when would it make sense? I mean, if we were to exceed our borrowing capacity, is that the only?
You know, I don't know in 2017 what drove that decision, so I can't tell you. I'm sorry. I don't have any context for when that made sense.
Well, adding to where it might be possible, as we get further into the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan, there may be some benefit if we're helping to spur development by proactively borrowing to help projects come to pass. That might be the opportunity. Again, there would be revenue theoretically from those projects to make the payment. But again, in that environment, the way I understand it, the city is not absolved of ultimately making the debt payments if required. So it's not a panacea.
Right. I mean, I understand that. I'm just wondering, you know, why would we consider using CDA? And I think I understand the answer.
Right, in that scenario Steve described. So if they wanted to, you know, potentially take possession of the would be a building in that district, they would then be involved in taking out a loan for a developer to redevelop a building. We then would collect the increment from future tax revenue and then repay the CDA for that loan.
And I think that has real potential. We've talked about the fact that the CDA may be nearing the point where they're ready to launch off and be involved in more things. I mean, they've done a wonderful job with Parkview and Cedar Rail over the years, and they're working on a big project to rehab those facilities. But they may be able to play a role in development in a way that, if you look across the state of Wisconsin, community development authorities and RDAs, which is a redevelopment authority, they make a big part, they're big players in terms of downtown redevelopment in many areas. We just haven't used them that way. That would be the best place to explore their bonding authority, I think, truthfully. Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
2 questions. One might be for Jennifer, just to warn you. It was my understanding that, so what I'm hearing is it's best to only use that type of situation or scenario if there is a TID so that we're getting the funds back. But my understanding was if we went over our debt capacity, our interest rates would go up. And so maybe in that kind of scenario, even though we don't want to go over our debt capacity, but if we did, having the CDA borrow for us would keep us below so that our interest rates weren't higher.
Correct. Typically when the CDA is not going out, like the city will go out for either bonds or promissory notes, in that case, the CDA utilized a local bank for a loan, and then it doesn't count against our debt limit, and at that time it will be whatever the prevailing rates are of local banks who would be willing to participate.
Okay, and then my next question, I don't know who I'm directing this question to, whether, I don't know. I'm seeing that this borrowing for the police station is for 2025, so that's next year. How are we going to go about deciding what we're doing with the police station? If we approve the CIP, I mean, we're going to be borrowing that money soon. Is it next summer?
In a year,
yeah.
We would be borrowing. It might take a period of time should we go this route and choose to refurbish the Wildwood building. Then we would pay for the study. But by the time construction starts, we might run into a cash flow issue. So we have to sort of borrow ahead of that schedule in order to be able to meet construction costs of the building. So that's why the borrowing would begin for more than just the cost of the engineering in 2025.
Okay. And do we have any schedule to help us make this decision? Is there a plan for when we're going to make this decision?
You mean looking at debt payments over the years and what?
No, looking at whether we're going
timeline?
to do the Wildwood building or renovate the existing building.
I don't think we have a specific plan or timeline. We've kind of let this sit for a little while. We kind of felt the CIP would be the best place to drive this conversation because really, I mean, we're talking about a significant debt. We're talking about a $10 million debt over a couple of years. And, you know, we certainly go back to the plan that was drawn up and the options that we'll need. Obviously, you see the $800,000 in there for engineering and consulting services. This project would have to be worked to a point where it was more firm design than you have today. I think we're just looking for whether or not that's where you want to go. Because ultimately, if you don't want to go there, then we look at other alternatives for the building and again, fixing up the existing building. But we think there's a lot of merit in using this opportunity to look at relocating PD. So, I mean, if you decide out of this process that you're going to do this, we're not going to borrow money tomorrow and all of a sudden be out there doing work. That would start the process or restart the process in terms of more serious design work in front of you to try and lay out a plan and a timeline to do this.
So I guess my question is, at what meeting will we vote to decide that we are going to do the design? Because, I mean, it is a significant amount of money to do the design. Was it, what, $800,000? So is that the plan, that we will have an agenda item at some point?
I think we'll have to go back to the plan and talk about that. Yeah, I mean, right now we're trying to see whether or not you want to put this marker in the ground that you plan on borrowing the money. I mean, that's going to be a whole event also when we go back into the plan and do exactly what you're talking about. But we're trying to identify what the borrowing expectations might be in the coming years. And then we kind of drill down from there to where you're at.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, stormwater.
Okay, that starts on page 150. So we have a new wet detention basin to be constructed in Brain Park. And this is part of the Wisconsin River TMDL, total maximum daily load of phosphorus. And so we have to start working to reduce the amount of phosphorus released by the city of Marshfield over the next decade by 10%, or the next 5 years by 10%. So what we've done is Josh has been working with Strand Associates to apply for a grant to help with the construction of a pond in Brain Park. The plan is to possibly start design in 2025. Or design in 25 and then construction in 2026. I was kind of disappointed by the DNR only limiting the max that you can get as a grant opportunity. It's a 50-50 grant up to a maximum of $150,000. So it really does put a strain on stormwater management because we then have to use, since we don't have a utility, we have to use general tax dollars to pay for these projects. The second project in here is the Mill Creek Business Park dry pond to wet pond conversion. And we're looking at the design starting in 2027 and construction in 2028 at a total of just under around $1 million. We have the Becker Road Culvert Replacement Project. Now, we have twin pipes that were there, and as you remember, last November, we had an issue where we had a force main break. It was right directly under these two culvert pipes. They had rusted through, and we believe that the salt that was seeping into the ground was the cause of our leak in the force main. So this would be done in conjunction with the force main repairs. So this would also be something where we apply for 50-50 aid with Wood County to help fund putting in a concrete box culvert at this crossing. And our plan is about $120,000 in grants and $250,000 in long-term debt for a total of $370,000. So that's stormwater items. Are there any questions on stormwater?
Alderman Stauber?
I haven't heard the term stormwater utility in quite a few years. And I wonder if we couldn't just, without burdening you too much, if we could just get a kind of a synopsis of what that means, not tonight, but what that would look like. You know, what would it actually take to form a stormwater utility?
I can do that for you.
Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, I read an article recently about these utilities are starting to get shot down as taxes rather than allowing them to continue as utilities. Steve, I had sent you a copy of that. Just stress to everybody cautionary approaches on these because we're in a turbulent time with these changing right now. And we don't want to put all those eggs in one basket and have it turn out to be a tax. So just food for thought.
Your point is well taken. That really applies specifically to the transportation utility fee, which is a little bit newer. Stormwater utilities have really stood the test of time. They seem more quantifiable and defensible based upon the fact that it ties to the amount of impervious surface that a property has. But you're still right to caution us to make sure that these are fees that we can hold up and know that they're going to pass a legal test.
I've one other question, Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead, Russ, and then Alderman Farr, is that okay?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Did you?
I think that everybody should realize that I lived through the last stormwater utility. Well, I gotta make it clean. I gotta want to use the words I want to use. We had a problem with all of the chamber came up and said that they would help us get through this thing so it would work real fine. We gave them 6 weeks, and when they came back to kill the whole program, they didn't go for us, they went against us. So you have to watch how you approach this. If we would have approved that the first night, the second reading, we would have a stormwater utility. We listened to the chamber, and they're the ones that stuck it to us. Otherwise, we would have had a stormwater utility for many years. So you have to be very careful how we do this. Talk you into it. Give us 6 weeks and we'll help you. They helped us.
Helped you shut it down. Yeah.
Yes, Tom, and then Alderman Stauber.
All right, just a recap on that. That happened back in 2004, and it was actually a process that took almost 1.5 years, and it was a little more than 6 months that process. So we worked with some of the bigger players in the program, and it did not pass at that time. But I do remember that one very well.
Yeah.
So,
Alderman Stauber?
Maybe not appropriate for this venue, but phosphorus. I know some communities, well, I read an article about lawn clippings getting into the storm system and that being a large phosphorus source. And I don't know much beyond that. I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is, you know, some communities have leaf vacuums and lawn clipping vacuums, and I'm wondering, do we ever reach a point of, you know, where we consider that to avoid lawn clippings or leaves going into our system?
all right, right now, the city of Marshfield has had on its books a ordinance that doesn't allow you to blow your grass clippings into the street, and you're not supposed to put your leaves into the street. We do a regular street sweeping, and that's part of our TMDL requirements right now. So we are picking up on a regular basis. We do offer the yard at Hume Avenue for dropping off leaves, and that does meet the requirements. At one point, we were picking that up, but that was removed in a previous budget a few years back. And in fact, Waste Management doesn't even have the equipment anymore to pick up leaves. They're only using the other trucks, the automated trucks. So it would be a situation if we wanted to start picking up leaves. We'd have to probably buy equipment and probably have some staffing to do that. The DNR, as part of our current TMDL, we did take a look at increased sweeping in neighborhoods where we'd get that benefit, and we are working on that to meet those requirements.
Yeah, and I'm not here to advocate right now for us to do this, but I will tell you that if you look back 20 years compared to now, the expectations of local government for treating stormwater have grown exponentially. Once upon a time, it was all about just the quantity. Now it's about the quantity and the quality. And you've seen presentations, Tom, you made one here not too long ago that talked about the cost over the next 10, 20, 30 years of dealing with the water quality from stormwater.
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with this. So up until our newest TMDL with our newest management, we were actually meeting all the stormwater quality management requirements with what we were doing. We only had to meet a 20% TSS removal, which is total suspended solids. With the Wisconsin River being moved from a TSS requirement to a TMDL requirement, we've now seen those rates that we have to maintain to meet those jump from the 20% to 70 to 80%. So we are, I think in our last presentation, I had between 10 million and 13 million to meet those requirements over a period of time based upon current numbers. And there would be a variety of different things to do that. Improvements like these ponds that we were talking about, buying credits for working with outside of the city limits, and also looking at other opportunities that would help provide meeting those requirements.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. Is this tested? Like, is our water outflow tested for how well we're doing?
No, we don't actually test our stormwater. It's all based upon modeling. The DNR has done a lot of testing. The DNR has done a leaf program where if you have leaves in the streets, they've actually tested to see how much phosphorus is created by those. So that's why they're telling us these programs are beneficial for meeting those requirements for phosphorus removal. So we're just kind of meeting the modeling that goes with that to get to those points. And so it's a balancing act of trying to hit a lot of little different areas to make sure that we start working our way towards that goal.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, moving on to streets.
All right, we're on page 154. And the first project is annual seal coat and crack filling of city streets. Excuse me. In 2025, we had $375,000, and we're starting to ramp it up in 26 to 29. We want to go to $400,000 per year, with 29 moving to $425,000. And this is crack filling and our surface seal coating of asphalt streets. The next project is the street department electrical. Since we've been in the building some 40 to 80 years in various parts of the street department, we do need to upgrade the electrical, so we're proposing $140,000 for that project in 2027. And then in the vehicle equipment fund, annual purchases, we're looking at, this is the 701 account where we charge rental rates back to fund the vehicles within that, the internal service fund. And so for 2025 and 2026, we're looking at $400,000. 27, we're looking at $430,000. 28, we're looking at $425,000. And then 29, we're looking at $430,000. And then we have the vehicles that are kind of planned for in those years of that are needs for the city of Marshfield. The next project is tuck pointing the street department main building. This project has just been moved back just a year or two to 2029 at $125,000. So that's the rest of the street department.
Any comments, questions? Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see that the paint truck is for next year. I've actually heard from 3 constituents in my district who have said, and granted, elderly drivers. So, you know, they really notice when there's not lines. I think it just helps with the driving and staying independent.
Next, technology.
All right. And Ang's the expert on these, but I'll just kind of go through them quickly and give you the costs and numbers, and he can answer any questions. So the first project is the network penetration test, and looking at doing it in 2026 at $26,000 and 2028 at $28,000. The Microsoft SharePoint upgrade, looking at spending $27,000 in 2026, and our current version is from 2016. Then we have the rugged mobile computers for police department vehicles and looking at spending $50,000 in 2025. And then replace obsolete networking equipment in 2027 at $198,000. And the call manager's upgrade is actually scheduled for 2028 at $27,000. And those are the projects for IT.
Alderman Stauber?
Micromanaging now, so forgive me. But when it comes to updating laptops, looking at I think there were 10 for the police department, at $50,000, and the funding source would be tax levy. Do we have the option to phase those over a period of time, or is it they're obsolete, we need to get them, no messing around situation?
Certainly, you can always try to stress this out a little bit if you want to, but it's just that for public safety reason that we wanted to do all of them at the same time, so that no matter which vehicle they jump into, it's the same equipments. Plus, all of the laptops that are in those squad car, we do buy the 5 years accidental damage protection to go with that, because you have extreme weathers in the vehicles throughout the year, and then there's lots of vibrations and roof bumps and so on. So after 5 years, more than 5 years, those equipments get swapped out, and if they are not broken, we do reuse them for training or other uses that are in a less critical situation.
Thank you. It's not that big amount of money, but it's just, I thought I would ask a question.
Any other questions? Thank you. And now moving into wastewater.
All right. The first project we have is phosphorus removal improvements. And again, if you're aware, we have to adjust the amount of phosphorus that's even released from our wastewater treatment plants. And these are part of the plant upgrades with a total cost of $380,000 for 2025. And this is a companion project with with the disc filters, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. The next project is wastewater utility vehicles and equipment. So they're looking at replacing M94 in a service truck in 2025 at $89,000, a forklift in 2025 at $40,000, ATV at $15,000 in 2026, a pickup truck in 2027 at $50,000, and another pickup truck in 2028 at $45,000, and then the passenger car, the sedan, which is usually used for errands and traveling in and out of town, for $40,000 in 2028. We have the Lincoln Avenue lift station upgrade, controls, and generator. The pumps and motors and force main were upgraded in 2013. The generator was installed in 1979 and has not seen an upgrade since. So we're looking at spending consultant services about $100,000 in 26, with construction at about $500,000 in 2027. The wastewater treatment plant phosphorus disc filter. This project is underway right now, and this project was a total of $10,300,000. And this was also, as you're aware, part of the Clean Water Loan Fund, where if we get this done in time and everything's operational, we'll see about $3 million or $3.1 million in principal forgiveness on this loan. The next is the Northeast Lift Station rehabilitation, looking at spending $1.825 million in 2025 to upgrade the last two pumps in this facility and fix the wet well and staircase and some other items that go with the this lift station. This lift station was installed in 1976. This next project is the biosolids thickener. This is also being installed as part of the projects taking place right now at the wastewater treatment plant. And it's at $1.5 million with $875,000 of this project being covered by the Clean Water Loan Fund. And then we have the Northeast Lift Station Force Main inspection, and that's scheduled for next year with $50,000 or $500,000. And what we are looking at doing here is installing a location that we can launch an electronic device to actually x-ray the force main from inside without having to try to drain that. That force main is would take. We want to know where we might have some weak spots, and this will actually give us that information. So if, as we make the repairs at Becker Road, if there's another spot, we want to maybe plan for that at the same time. And this is a way of getting information on that 50-plus-year-old force main. Just for another little bit of information, we've exposed it in various locations. We'll also be able to get location with this device, with this inspection process. We have, in the locations we have exposed it, other than at Becker Road, it actually is still looking in pretty good shape in most of those locations. So we have the Northeast Lift Station force main repairs, and we're looking at about $1 million, and we are not 100% sure if we're going to have other locations other than Becker Road, but we do need to make some repairs on Becker Road, and that's going to be in conjunction with the culvert for the storm sewer at that location. And then we have a Northeast Lift Station force main new. We're looking at the possibility of either providing another route, rehabilitating the entire pipe, or having some redundancy for force main from the Northeast Lift Station. That Northeast Lift Station is our largest lift station, and it carries more than half the city flow back up and over the tracks. And we're looking at design in 2026 at $912,000 and construction in 2027 at about $7.9 million. So that kind of ends the wastewater items. If there's any questions on wastewater.
Alderman Giles?
Yes, for that inspection, is that a one-time thing where someone comes in and inspects it, or is it something that we can use multiple times in the future?
There's actually about 4 companies that actually have various equipment that's similar to this, and it's a one-time inspection, but we have to do some construction to the actual force main to create a insertion point to actually do this inspection. So it's a situation where we're going to now make this so that we can actually do this on a more regular basis, which will bring down that cost. But the equipment is so specialized. I believe one of the companies was from Switzerland or Germany that actually had the piece of equipment. So they're very specialized pieces of equipment that do this inspection.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you for the report, Tom.
So
Yes, sir.
for the emergency medical services and fire and rescue, we can either read those tonight, or would you prefer to maybe schedule that to bring that back next week, and then they're here to answer any
Yes.
questions you have?
If that's okay with everyone, I think that's probably a really good idea. Yes, next week, we'll do these other 2 that were not able to be here.
And if you have other questions associated with what we've gone through here tonight, feel free to call or contact myself or any of the other division or department heads to get any questions answered.
Well done.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here this evening.
I think that the next step then would be, we meet again a week from tonight at 6 p.m., go through the fire and EMS portions with the relevant staff here to answer any questions. And then we can just start digging in. So, look it over, get ready. If you have more questions, you want more information from us in the next week, let us know, reach out to me, reach out to Tom, ask those questions so we can bring the information. And then we can have a discussion about what things you might want to see modified. If there's things you'd like to see added, removed, moved to a different year for some reason, be ready to bring those up. I will say one more thing, sort of expanding on what I said earlier about the police station. Again, you're not making a decision at this point, but if you do in fact give us the go ahead that you think it's reasonable, that at $10 million, the way it's borrowed, the borrowing plan is, if that's something you're seriously interested in, believe me, when you adopt the CIP in July, we'll come back to you pretty quickly and start the process of talking about the particulars on how we might move forward to where we can help you make a decision on that project.
Alderman Stauber?
I'll just make a comment on that. I wasn't in favor of accepting the building. I just thought it was a bad move, but now I see the need to relocate. I just don't feel comfortable with the current station being so close to the rail line for obvious reasons. So I'm going to support the change if it comes to that. So.
I see a motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Marshall. Please everyone vote to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We will see you next Thursday here at 6 p.m.
Thanks, Lois.